3, 2.
So in terms of the repression, which started, as we said before, on the very first day of the coup, there were right away converted the stadium, soccer stadium, like National Stadium in Chile, as concentration camp, where they have thousands and thousands of people being detained, tortured, even assassinated, killed there in that same place. They have Estadio Chile, which is the second biggest stadium in Santiago, converted into a concentration camp too, where they were interrogating, killing, and make people disappear. One of the big persons that was killed there, Victor Jara, a national singer, very well known, the stadium now, Estadio Chile, has his name, Estadio Victor Jara now, because he was killed there in a very brutal way, the way he was assassinated. And I mention this because Victor Jara is very well known all over the world today. And the repression started, well, from that day, but continued over the 17 years. I myself was a survivor of concentration camp for 2.5 years, where I was detained, where I was tortured, and then finally sent to exile. Because that's the other way that people also were repressed, people being sent to exile. Because we have, at that point, where there were about 13 million people to 12 million people, the population, and we have more than 1 million people living outside of the country. So that's to have an idea how terrible was the situation that we were living in Chile at that time. And many other camps along the country. I mean, I was transferred from Santiago to 2 or 3 different concentration camps by the time I was detained there. So they were all along in the north and the south, even Iceland in the south of the country. There was an island where people were sent there being detained. I mean, and the very important thing to stress out here, none of us were charged. We were just detained because we were dangerous for the interior security of the state. That's what they call it. Never brought into any judge, never brought into any court. We are just dangerous, never tried. Similar situation we're living here in the United States, in Guantanamo.
Yes, and that policy of fear and manipulation of that fear, and by just calling someone, they would use the words terrorist and communist, and some words that were actually quite similar to language used in the Patriot Act. When I heard that language, I got very scared because I recognized the language that the Pinochet government had used to justify taking away certain civil liberties, to justify detaining people, to justify kinds of vigilance on people. Very similar language, so it made me nervous because it's a slippery slope, and people justify a lot when they're afraid.
At that time we are all communists. Today they are all terrorists.
Yeah,
they changed the word, but why the repression or detention or etc., torturing people is exactly the same.
And in the play, the kids in Benny's 7th grade class call her communist and the terrorist.
Yes. Yes.
Because it's a way of throwing something at, making someone alien, making someone less human, making somebody to be afraid of, and therefore justifying treating them inhumanely. This is sadly not a new thing in human history.